Morning, everyone. My name's Nash, and I'm a developer evangelist for Twilio. Has anybody here heard of Twilio at all before? A few people, that's good, excellent. A few people who don't, so I will have to run through the quick description just to keep you all up because I get paid for doing that. Twilio is a communications platform. We allow you to connect with your users any way you like using the tools, languages, and frameworks that you already know. That just means that we're an API and we can contact people with SMS, phone calls, video calls, and other messaging platforms. And we're building lots of this kind of stuff. So if you've not heard of Twilio before, do please check it out. I think it's pretty cool, and it's not because they pay me. That is me online everywhere. Phil Nash, pretty much everywhere, except two places now. Last FM, because they don't let you change your name on there. And that's kind of annoying because 18-year-old Phil thought Nash Legend was a really great username. And then I'm also on Twitch now, trying to stream code every now and again, and I'm Phil_Nash on there because somebody decided they were me. So we'll move on from that. There's a warning with this talk, because there is some live coding. I'm going to sit down and code on this, and this is not just things might go wrong because I spell things wrong, but we're also working off the internet of this iPad here. Because the Wi-Fi was terrible for me earlier. So bear with me if anything does go wrong. We are all going to hopefully learn something out of this presentation. There's also going to be some ES6 or ES 2015, or we don't know. I don't know. 2015 is over now. It's 2016. Let's get on with the new JavaScript stuff. That's all that matters. Some of the stuff is in here is fairly new JavaScript stuff that's not ES 2016 or 2015 or whatever. But I will explain the bits as I go through them, as I write them out. There is going to be a bit of audience participation. We are here talking a bit about push notifications, so I'm going to need you to make some notifications happen. That's going to be over Twitter. I'll tell you a bit about that later when we get to it. But kind of have your phones at the ready, if that's okay. Cool. So that's all the warnings up front. What are we talking about? Well, we're here in the mobile first track, and so I'm not talking about mobile at all, but I am kind of talking a bit about web versus native. This is, I think, a battle that some people do believe in, some people don't, and they think web and native are very different things. But for me, I know that native is a really great testing ground for applications and for functions of applications that the web can use if it decides that it's worthwhile. And you know, we've done a few of these, done quite a lot of these over time. Like geolocation has been around on mobile devices for ages, works in browsers, that kind of thing. The same with access to the accelerometer. Something fairly new these days is the fact that you can do peer-to-peer video chat all within a browser, and I think that's absolutely magical. And push notifications is one of those things that the native applications, certainly on mobile, have had for an awfully long time, and the web has not, rather sadly. And that's what I mean by push notifications, this kind of rich, exciting kind of thing that gets hit to your phone to tell you that two people that you might follow on Twitter are now talking about Grey's Anatomy in this case. I don't know why that person ever got that push notification. I have seen things like that before. It's why I have all the Twitter application notifications turned off. So it's also important to know that sending terrible notifications is a bad idea too. As I work for Twilio, I probably would have previously suggested that sending text messages as a notification is a good idea. But when you don't have the little icon, when you don't have the open this into the app, then it isn't quite as good an experience. That really was kind of a replacement. So we're looking to kind of replace that for the web. Let's see what we can do. We kind of have notifications, sort of, on the web. This is where we're going to start doing a little bit of audience participation. So this is our hashtag for the day, Topconf push. When you tweet this, it's going to hit an app that I have running, and we're going to see things happen, hopefully. So we're going to go straight into demo number 1, and I'm going to drop out of full screen there. And this is our application. It's a very boring search for tweets on that hashtag, and I'm going to go and tweet with that hashtag right now. And there we go. We've got some things coming through already. That's pretty cool, right? This is notifications on the web. Well done. Things appear on the page. This is fairly simple. I've got the code for it right here. There's a Node.js backend which is listening to the Twitter streaming API, and when it gets something on the search, it simply emits an event out of a stream where we're using server-sent events, and that is then picked up on the front end with this event source. And we listen for the message, and we parse the data and add an LI to the page. Fairly straightforward, right? But not particularly good at notifying things. So the internet is working nicely. This is excellent. Hi, everyone. It does work. Who's done that? Yes. So that's fairly straightforward. I've got a couple of fancy things in here. One is this little bit here, which is the backtick notation for strings in JavaScript now, which allow you to do multi-line strings and templating within that string. So you don't have to do all that close string plus thing plus open string again, all that kind of stuff. Very fancy stuff. But like that is our notifications for right now. But the web actually has had real notifications for quite a while. The kind of notification that's going to appear outside the context of the browser and notify a person. And this has been supported in browsers for quite a long time, since Chrome 22, Firefox 22, which probably wasn't the same time, but just the same number, Opera 25, Safari on OS 10.8 and above, not iOS, and then in the Edge team it's under consideration. Now, there's a question? Go for it. Android stock browser. Ooh, maybe. No, probably not. I don't know. I don't have an Android phone, so I'm not entirely sure. I will look that up for you, though. Android stock browser. It's a good point. I'm going to come back to under consideration and the benefits of those two words in a bit, but it's not the worst thing. So let's write those notifications right now. I'm going to take a seat and actually do some typing, if that's okay. Let's come back out of here. So with those notifications, I'm just going to drop that to the bottom of the screen. I have a button on my page because these notifications, as they're a bit more intrusive, require some permissions. So I'm using jQuery here because I'm lazy, but you know, the internet's pretty cool these days, or the browsers are pretty cool these days. And so when we click that button, we just use the notification API in the browser. It's pretty cool, and you have to request permission for it. You could put that inside some kind of if statement and deal with like an acceptance or denial of that, but because I'm going to accept it, I'm not going to do that right now. And then similarly, over here, like when we get that message in, we can check for that permission. And there's three possible answers for this. Default, granted, and denied. So we have to check that it equals granted, because the default is kind of ask, which is what we're doing. So if we have been granted permission, then we can write out our notification, and it's actually fairly straightforward. We're just using basically the same stuff as we used before. We give a from as a title, and then we have an object of options which we can pass in. I'm just going to use the body for today, but this can also include icons and images and other things like that. So I'm going to include the body. Body, and that is all we need to do to actually make notifications happen in our browser. I'm going to pop back over here. I have not granted any permissions to this site right now, so if I refresh that page and hit that button, it's going to ask me for permission. That's very small on that screen, but it is saying, would you like to receive notifications from this site? And I can click that, and I will always receive notifications. And if somebody tweets in right now, like that, it won't work. Good. Terrifying. It's all stopped working already. Let's debug that quickly. I'm just going to see if our notification, make that bigger. Our permission is granted, so it should just be doing those things, and it's not. Oh well, okay, fun times. This is not the most important part of it, so I will skip on if it's not going to work, because I came handily prepared with GIFs of how it works. Hooray! So this is actually in Chrome in this particular case, and a thing comes in and you get that kind of notification up the top right of your screen. That's the um, permissions thing in Chrome, and as you see, you get the thing in. It has all the same details. It's quite nice. You can click on it. It'll go to the page. Lovely. We can ignore those. That was 5 lines that don't really make any sense because they're not push notifications. Those notifications will only appear if you are actively on that website. I mean, or have the tab open somewhere. And that's not very cool. That's not bringing somebody back to your site. That's not re-engaging them for some reason. That's not making them aware of something that's very important to them right now, like Grey's Anatomy. We want to talk about push notifications. And this is all powered by the service worker. Who's heard of service workers? Okay, most people, that's cool. They have been in Chrome for just over a year now. They came out, I think, in January last year. So pretty exciting times for interesting stuff on the web. I think the service worker is the biggest thing to have hit like browsers since like the XML HTTP request. I can't think of anything that's more kind of interesting since that, and it's going to make a whole lot of difference. And this is one of those reasons. So it is a service worker is a piece of JavaScript that runs outside the context of your site, outside the context of the page, and in the background. So it continues to run even if you are not actively on a website. It exists because the application cache was, according to Jake Archibald, a douchebag. I kind of liked it, but then I never made any complicated websites with the application cache. It was very good at keeping a very simple site offline. It's very declarative, a very nice way of doing that, but it didn't really work for a lot of people with more complicated use cases. So the service worker was born. And then, as I guess like the teams working on it realized that having this piece of code running outside the context of a page meant that there was more that you could do with that. There's more things you could trigger from the browser with that. And so it's not just for offline, and that's kind of what's got me excited as well. And so we have push notifications in it. That's where I'm getting to, obviously. But there's also, coming up, there's coming to Chrome fairly soon, I think, is a background sync kind of process, which allows you to kind of fire off a request, and if it doesn't work, it will keep trying in the background, so your user doesn't have to like keep going back to your app, pressing the button again, and hoping something works. It's going to keep firing in the background. And there's always been like rumors of the idea that like geofencing from geolocation will get into the service worker as well. So you could trigger kind of I entered an area kind of event, although I haven't seen much on that recently. So support for service workers, as I said, dropped into Chrome 40 just over a year ago. And I've given this talk a few times in the past few months, and up until recently I've had to say that it's behind a flag in Firefox. But last week was a glorious moment in which Firefox 44 dropped in with service worker support. And so we have 2 browsers doing this right now, and it's very exciting. I say 2 browsers, we have Opera as well. I didn't mean to be like that about Opera. That's a little harsh. Opera has had it since version 24, about the same time that Chrome 24 came out, as they're on Chromium. Safari on OS 10 does not have service worker support. Oh, that shouldn't be a question mark either. No, it should. It's still a question mark. No idea what they're thinking about it. Safari, actually, the WebKit team recently, or I just recently found it, published a site in which they have their current progress on various things. Could not find service workers on there. I was quite sad about it. WebRTC they're working on. I like WebRTC as well, but don't know about service workers. And the Edge team are thinking about it. But I think under consideration is much better than a question mark. That's important. And as it comes to it, push notification support is even more important in this case, because that actually took 2 more versions in Chrome to get involved. It is in Firefox 44. Don't know about Opera. I'll come back to that in a sec. In OS 10.8 and above, Safari 6 and above, you can make push notifications happen on the desktop. It is entirely non-standard. It uses the Apple push notifications that they use for iOS applications. It goes into the notification center, but you need to mess around with all the awkward things that any other iOS developer has to deal with, like with certificates and iTunes and app stores and I don't know. it's a horrible way, and we shouldn't support it. They should do service workers standards all the way, right? And they're thinking about it. It's better than non-standard. They're gonna get to it, I'm sure. I did actually ask about Opera recently, because I gave this talk, and in the front row was Opera evangelist, former evangelist, and now deputy CTO Bruce Lawson, who shouted out, "It's coming." So last week when I heard about Firefox, I tweeted at him. I was like, "Okay, any more news on that?" And it's good news, because he said it's on the roadmap, and he also sent me a picture of the roadmap as well. The actual response I got. So I don't know. Hopefully still soon. Come on, Opera, we can do this. Excuse me. So yeah, it's on its way. If you want to look at more information on service worker support, status.modern.ie is great because it actually talks about all the browsers and what they're thinking about. And Jake Archibald's Service Worker Ready site is very good for picking up on that. These slides will be on later, so links are all in there. But let's build some service workers. Let's build some notifications right now. This is hopefully what you wanted to see. So there was our stuff that didn't work before. Forget about that. We don't need that anymore. What we're going to do instead is when we click that button, we are going to register ourselves a service worker. I am not checking for the existence of service workers because I'm fairly confident that in the browsers I'm working in, they're going to be there. So it's on the navigator object, and we just call register, and we give that a URL or a path to our service worker file. Mine is in service worker.js. And that returns us a promise, actually, which is quite cool, because then we can go, when the service worker is ready, we'll get that callback, and we'll get a registration, is what we asked for. And with that registration, normally you don't need to do much with it, but we're actually going to, it has a push manager attached to it, and we want to subscribe to that. And we have to pass that an object of options, user visible only. Kind of awkward option, but I'll explain what it does later. And we subscribe to that, and that returns a promise. And so when that promise resolves, we get ourselves a subscription. Cool. And that subscription comes with an endpoint. This is actually not how Chrome 42 worked, but this is the more recent version of it. We get an endpoint out of this subscription. And that endpoint is a URL that we can hit that will cause a push notification to happen in this browser, in the browser that registers and subscribes in this point. So I'm just going to send that URL down to my server. Endpoint equals endpoint. I'm going to send that down to my server. That's just an endpoint on my server, which is saving that into memory. In fact, I can show you that. It's right here. We're getting this. We're going to get the endpoint. I'll talk about the key in a minute. We're going to just get the endpoint and save that. That's just in memory on the server. This is not a scalable system, by the way. Cool. So when we subscribe, we're going to do that. Fetch is the fancy new XML HTTP request, if you've not seen it before. It also returns promises, but this one's going to work, so I'm not going to look for any reasons why. Very confident, I know. Cool. So this is our service worker file, currently empty, as you can see. And what we need to do is start adding event listeners. The service worker itself is known as self within the file, and we're going to listen for the push event. Kind of makes sense, I suppose. And we'll get an event. And so we're dealing with Chrome right now. All I have is an endpoint and I'm going to get an event. And when I do, we're going to wait, tell that event to wait until the stuff we've done happens before it's kind of over, before it gives up control. And this is because we're going to start running a few promise-based things here as well. Because in Chrome, still, sadly, you can't send any data with that event. So we can't know kind of what this was about. So I'm just going to, for the purposes of this demo, going to call out to a latest endpoint, which is also on my server. That's here, and just gets the latest search for our hashtag and returns it. So we're going to do fetch latest, and that does return a promise, so we're using it now, and we get some data back. And we're going to return, this is quite cool, because there's like a promise-based thing on that to parse the JSON out of that data. So I like that, so we can then chain up another thing, and we've got the message at this point. And with that message, we can then show our notification, which is kind of cool. We take our service workers registration that we made in the front end, and we call show notification on that. Oops. Show notification. And this is basically the same API as our notification API on the front end. So we're just going to put in from message from, and then the body, which is going to be the message. And once that is over, the event is happy that it's waited and it's showed the notification. And this is actually where we have this user visible only true setting as well. There's a point that maybe there'll be push notifications or background notifications that the browser is allowed to kind of deal with quietly and save data about. But right now, this is telling it that it has to show something. The question again? Go for it. Say again, sorry. Oh, sorry. So I'm talking about front end, and this is not the back end. This is somewhere in the middle, which is kind of weird. This is the service worker. So it's in the browser, but it's not running on the web page itself. So we have 3 files here. This is the back end. This is a Node.js server based on Express right now. This is the front end, the JavaScript that's running in our front end and responding to like button clicks and things like that. And this is the service worker. Yeah. The URL. Oh, I will show you that in a minute when we actually run this. Yeah, no, I mean, I'll tell you a bit more about it when we get to see it as well, actually. But when I'm just going to do one more event listener for the service worker, because we need something to happen when, say, you click on that notification. Because if this is run outside of the context of the site, you've actually closed the tab, you probably need to be able to get back to the site you want to see the notification for, see what actually happened. And so this one's fairly straightforward. We're going to wait until the thing happens for the service worker again. And we're just going to, we call clients to open window. And I'm just going to open up my local copy of that for right now. There's a lot more you can do with this, but I don't kind of have time to go into notification click events right now, because we've got to see some more exciting stuff in a minute. Cool, so that should work. And what I'm going to do is open up Chrome to go and take a look at this for right now. So here's our site again. I'm just going to, we don't have any notifications yet, so I have this in the background as well. When I click on that, we'll get our notification asking me to allow it, and that posts back. So this is that endpoint that gets posted by Chrome. Android.googleapis.com, GCM send. And so this is actually based on Google Cloud Messenger right now, and is kind of non-standard. I'm going to show you the standard way in just a second with Firefox, because that's kind of what's exciting about it coming out with it as well. There we go, we have a push. We had a thing come up. If I click on that, actually, it should open a new tab, because that happened outside the context of the actual existing open tab. So I should be able to close that, and if somebody else sends another one through, I'm just asking you to tweet all the time, but Chrome is still open in this case. I'll note that I've closed all the tabs, but Chrome is still open. If you close the entire browser, there we go, it worked, haha, and we can open it back up. If you close the entire Chrome desktop browser, those things will stop coming through, which is kind of a shame. But we were talking about mobile, and so if that happens on Chrome on Android, then it will actually wake the browser up and cause a real notification, as if it was an Android application. So that's kind of cool. But like I said, sadly, it's kind of, I've turned the notifications off for right now, from Chrome anyway. It's slightly non-standard, rather sadly. So we get this endpoint, but I still have to go through the Google Cloud Messenger service. And what actually happens is, if you see the endpoint at the top, at the end of the URL, there is a big long kind of ID string. And that, I mean, that is all the Chrome Service Worker used to give you back when you subscribed to the Push Manager. It just gave you that ID, and then you hand that off to Google Cloud Messenger as you would if you were making an Android application. But the web is not based on Google Cloud Messenger. It likes to be based on standards. So between Google and Firefox, they worked on the Web Push API. And that is why, one, we have this endpoint here. But secondly, so what will happen in Firefox is we'll get that endpoint, and that is the URL that we can directly post things off to. But we can also post the data, post data about that event as well. So we're going to work to make that happen. So I'm back in my front-end app.js running on the page, and I'm going to check for the existence of, not the endpoint, subscription. There's a get key method. And if we have that, then we're going to do something. If not, we're going to do the old fetch that we did earlier. And if we have that, then we're going to get ourselves a raw key. These keys are a bit interesting. I actually am only just learning about them because it is very new to me. But I can get this key, and I give it this string, which I assume is something to do with 256k Diffie-Hellman prime. I don't know. That's my guess right now. I don't really know. I haven't had the time. I've mainly learnt the code rather than exactly what happens in the back end of it. But with that key, we need to be able to send it back to the server as well. But that is currently like a weird binary thing. So I'm going to take, what I need to do is turn it into a base64 encoded string that is from charcode. No, line. And we turn the thing into a uint8 array of that raw key. Yeah, this is all about like keys and encryption and stuff, and I'm not in any way a cryptologist, so I don't know too much about this. All I know is that turns it into some sort of string that we can send back to our server, so let's do that now. And we'll see that on the back end. It will be, as I say, a base64 encoded key, and that's all you need to know for this right now. I'm not going to go into that. There's plenty of documentation that I'm yet to read as well. So in Firefox, we should have this get key method, and we'll be able to get this key out of it and send that back to our server as well. So that will come into this query here. And when it does, I just want to show you this back end here as well. This is the Twitter streaming API client, and this is what it was doing when it receives some data. It turned it into a from and a body. The emitter is the bit that then was sending it out over the server-sent events channel. And then if we have the endpoint, and if we just have an endpoint, then we use this web push module. This is just a node module that's been built that handles the difference between Firefox and Chrome right now. So it's quite good, but it doesn't handle it too well, so I still have to have a conditional in here. But it's fairly new and getting better. And all you do is pass that endpoint in, and it splits the ID off. You also add your Google Cloud Messenger API key to the web push module as well to allow you to use it. But if we have that key, then we can send a notification with the endpoint and a key and some JSON of the data. So that's cool, and that will then come back in our push listener over here. So I'm going to check for the existence of event.data, and if I do have it, if I don't have it, we're going to run the previous code and go get the data, which is not quite as good. But if we do have it, then we can simply get the message, and that will be event.data.json. For some reason, this is a push event. This is a push data object, and the JSON method on there returns JSON straight away. This is like an event. This is like a fetch data object, and the JSON returns a promise. So I don't know why that is. Hopefully they're working to kind of make those pretty even as well. But we're going to wait. Now we're going to wait for the event to finish, and we're just then going to return our notification using that data that we got straight from the event. Much cooler. So that won't. This will still work in Chrome, but we want to show this now in Firefox. So we're going to refresh that page. I'm just going to cancel the notification permission just to get new notification permission, make sure it's all properly working okay, and we can go and look at that URL it's taking its time. Okay, and I'm not sure Firefox is happy with me today. I tell you what, I'm just going to restart that server. Firefox is not happy about this. So what we should be getting is, I push that, I get the notification, and it should send it through to the back end, although clearly I've done something wrong, but I'm not getting any errors in the console either. That's rather sad, because this was working last night. I tell you what, I have backups. We have a little bit of time, so this is a working bit of code. Because I don't have the proof in GIF form that it works with Firefox like that. So let's try one more time. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll tell you what I've done. I think I missed the new uint8 array. That is what I did. Okay, I have the working code on there right now. How annoying, right? We'll hit get. We'll just see if that's worked. That's come through. That has come through. So as you can see, the endpoint here is updates.push.services.mozilla.com, and there's an error, so that's good. My pushes are failing now on the back end because my key is incorrect. Good stuff. All right, we're probably going to have to move on from that because it's a little bit disappointing right now. But as you can see, you get a different endpoint, you get this key come through, and all this code will be up and working on GitHub later. Okay. The important thing, the differences are with Google right now, with Chrome right now, you have to use Google Cloud Messenger, and you can't get that event data through. With Firefox, you do have to go through a possible awkward bit of like kind of encryption and key-based stuff, but you should be able to get the event data through on the other end and not have to make another request. Cool. And that's what it looked like in Chrome, as we already saw. Ding, comes back up. Lovely. So I kind of want to finish up with one little warning, I guess. Kind of with great power, with this ability to send notifications to users outside the context of your website, it means you have to treat the users well. Otherwise, they will just turn those notifications off, and you can do that in the browser anywhere. In fact, if a notification comes in Firefox, there's like if you hover over the notification, you've got like a close button at the top, and then the button underneath drops down, and you can just cancel all notifications from a site there inside the notification itself. So don't piss people off. Don't send them useless information. Send them the stuff that they want to hear. I am excited about this because it is something that not just, this is not new, this is not something you can't use right now. This is something that Facebook have already implemented on m.facebook.com, and so if you are an Android Chrome user of Facebook and you don't want to install the app, you can still get notifications from Facebook. So I think that's kind of a use case that kind of proves this is mainstream already. I don't know why I'm even talking about it. But that's kind of exciting, and so Jake was excited about that as well. This code is all up online, and it does work when you run it, I promise. I did break it all yesterday, but it worked again by yesterday evening, and now it's broken again, but it'll be fine. The slides will be up on SpeakerDeck under my name on SpeakerDeck, and there are some other resources which I encourage you to go look at. The Service Worker Cookbook is from Mozilla, and I included it purely because it has the URL service workers. I think that's wonderful, and well done URL hacking that. The web push module for Node.js is very useful, even if you just want to see what's kind of going on behind the scenes, even if Node is not your preferred kind of environment. and the Google Dev Your First Push Notifications web app is very good to get off the ground and do this yourself. So that is all I've got for you today. Thank you very much for listening. Okay, I've got one quick plug, if you don't mind. I said at the start, I work for Twilio, and we are hosting a conference in May in San Francisco. It is all about communications and includes stuff like the push notifications, all the kind of SMS and voice calling stuff that we've done, but the exciting new kind of peer-to-peer streaming kind of stuff as well. And so I'd really love you all to come along. It's in May. If you use the code PNASH20, you'll get 20% off tickets. Please, I'd love to see you there. Other than that, I've been Phil Nash. I'm a developer evangelist for Twilio. Thank you very much. If we have oh, we do have questions. Cool. Anybody got any questions? How does the which server? So when it comes to the push notification bit, like that's not going from the server to the browser. It's coming from the like Firefox service up in the cloud, much like Google Cloud Messenger up in the cloud as well. So there is a service in the back end, yeah. You can actually go and check out the code behind Firefox's push notification service. It's the first version of it apparently was written in Go. Now it's written in Python. And it is on GitHub under github.com/Mozilla/autopush. So you can go see exactly what they're doing with the code on the other end of it up there. So that's, yeah, I shall put that link into things as well. Anybody else still? All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming and listening.